All right, we're recording.
Great, thanks, Haley. Good afternoon, everyone. This is definitely some new faces in the room and some of the same old faces. My name is Jeff Menzer. I'm the co-chair of the Social Determinants Work Group from the Reading Consortium. And I am co-chair with Ray Avery Jones, who's also on the call, the Zoom here this evening. And Haley is our resident guru of keeping us organized. So we do appreciate her being here as well. We're going to get started in another minute or two. We're going to let some folks trickle in the room. It'd be if we can get a quorum, and Haley will let us know when we do that. We have a backlog of meeting minutes we would love to just approve. So we may, that may jump in at some point. When we ask that those members, both the consortium members and members of the public, you feel free to use the chat function to put in questions when when the meeting is moving on, and we will do our best to incorporate them into the conversation. But please note at the end, there is a significant amount of time probably for public comment this month's meeting. We wanted to make sure we left some space for any folks to react to the discussions that we're having. In a few moments here, when I feel like, or Ray, when you also feel like when we're ready to get started, we'll just do a roll call in the chat for the members of the group. Yvette just said hello, so she's. Well, if you're a work group member, if you would please just kind of throw your name into the chat for us, so we can use that as our official attendance mechanism. Okay, Haley, we have 7 members right now. Am I correct? There's a iPhone that I'm not sure who that is.
Evelyn, Edney. Am I on mute?
I see Evelyn,
Cora, Yvette,
Delane. I almost said it wrong.
Johnson,
Yeah, and we have Dawn
Dawn,
Alexander, Terry Lawler. So we're at, and you and myself, so we're at 8. Daleen.
I think Mark here too.
Matt, Dan is on.
Is Matt part of the
No, Matt
work
doesn't
group?
count for quorum.
Matt's not part of the work group.
Well, I still think we can get started. If we have to come back and vote on the minutes, we can do that.
So Haley, if you want to advance the slide. So today we have two conversations. One, we're getting a presentation from Representative Krista Griffith regarding legislation related to the suppression of explanation of benefits. And then for that presentation, we're looking at, I believe Haley said 5 minutes to present and then a 5-minute Q&A roughly. And if we go over or under, we can make things work. And then we have what is going to be the primary bulk of our meeting, roughly 40-45 minutes. It's going to be a discussion with Dr. Adrian Peoples from the Department of Education and Katie Semmel from the Data Service Center. We're going to kind of help facilitate a brainstorming discussion around our focus on creating an equity data dashboard from this work group. That said, I am going to the next slide. Okay, we don't have the minutes in there. Good, we'll pop that in whenever we get a quorum. Haley, thanks. Representative Krista Griffith, I will turn it over to you. Welcome to our work group. And I know you have some folks from your office maybe who are here that you would like to introduce as well. And I'll please allow you the floor to take that time.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. Thank you, Ray. And thank you to members of your working group. I deeply appreciate the invitation to join you this afternoon. With me is Alexa Scoglietti. Alexa is the chief policy analyst for the House of Representatives, and has been very instrumental in being, sorry for my Outlook, I should have shut that off before I joined you, instrumental in shaping and researching what is known as House Bill 261. The current bill that was filed June 30th has had some changes, and we're going to do a substitute bill. But essentially what this bill does is, the goal of it is to really eliminate barriers that individuals might have in seeking healthcare, and specifically related to privacy for confidential or sensitive services. A policyholder of a medical insurance plan today may get an explanation of benefits form for any individual or member that is on his or her plan, a son, a daughter, a spouse, etc. And that form may specify a number of health issues, from access to mental health, reproductive services. If there's domestic violence in a relationship, someone might go for treatment, etc. So the purpose of this bill is really to remove that, to sort of create, I guess, some privacy protection for individuals who may not seek healthcare because they're afraid that the policyholder might find out certain information about who they're seeing, when they're seeing, and why they're seeing a provider. So what we've done is create what's called a common summary of payment form that will exclude details of what we're calling multiple sensitive health services that are articulated in the bill, and that would include reproductive services, contraceptive services, pre and postnatal services, pregnancy testing and counseling, abortion services, testing, treatment, and prevention of sexually transmitted disease, fertility and gender transition related services, behavioral health services and treatment, services related to sexual violence, domestic violence, and assessment of sexual or pregnancy coercion. The bill is being reintroduced in March to incorporate further protections that was requested by the Domestic Violence Delaware Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and to clarify some issues in the synopsis. But essentially what we're trying to do is remove those complications and access to care, especially for minors accessing confidential services that they are legally able to consent to. Persons experiencing domestic violence by the person who is a subscriber of their insurance policy, and persons between the ages of 18 and 26 that are still on their parents' health insurance. If I may, I'd like to just give Alexa a few minutes to add to anything that I've said, because again, Alexa has done a lot of research on this, including with partners in Massachusetts and Washington, who have already developed similar legislation. So Alexa, what else can we say about our House Bill 261?
Sure. And I thought you did a great job explaining the bill, Krista. I would just kind of add that, when we started working on this, Representative Griffith was definitely concerned about three major targets, which is, as she said, minors accessing confidential services that they're legally able to consent to, persons experiencing domestic violence by the person who is the subscriber of their insurance policy, and those between the ages of 18 to 26 that are adults but still on their parents' health insurance. I think it's just a way to make sure that people are receiving the privacy that they're entitled to for certain healthcare services, especially when there's no cost liability. I also would probably just add that this is the start to, furthering protections and privacy for these groups. But if you have any more technical questions on the bill, I'd be happy to dive into that. Not too technical, but
yeah, no, you're great at the technical stuff. I just will add this, it's sort of when I wear my mom hat, I say, geez, I wish I could string a line there that says, except for my sons, this doesn't apply to my boys. But then, the whole point is, look, like when my sons reach that age where they're still a little on the younger side, but when they're old enough, I don't want my receipt of an explanation of benefits form to get in the way if they wanted to seek mental health treatment or any of the enumerated, cases that are we outline in the bill. Again, it's to really encourage people to go see a doctor or a healthcare professional if they need the help. And this is a great way. And I know it's been, in terms of the advocates for this, the wellness centers have appreciated this legislation, reproductive health advocates, the LGBTQ community, The advocates against domestic violence and sexual violence also are supportive of this measure. So with that, let's get to any questions. I see Yvette has her hand raised. Hi, Yvette. Nice to see you again today.
Hi, Representative Griffith. So hi, everyone. I just wanted to share with the group that I know I had initially put forward the recommendation for you to come and present, specifically because our work group, one of our key priorities was to support elementary school-based wellness centers. And part of supporting school-based wellness centers is this whole question and conversation that we've had for the past 3 years. I know Jeff has been a part of them, around how we sustain school-based health center services. And I know, being able to come up with this common summary of payment form, which actually, does not violate confidentiality, helps to sustain school-based wellness centers, because there are many providers in the state of school-based health centers that operate in the red, right? This is really, school-based health centers are not a revenue generating operation for any provider. But we also know that, operating in the red potentially could begin to pose those questions in the healthcare field around, how can we continue to sustain this, right? Each year, we're bleeding, but it enables healthcare organizations to at least submit for payment of services if those suppression, if the suppression of the EOBs is passed. And so that was a big piece. I know that there was a huge coalition across the state that was working on this, and it included Public Health, Department of Ed, the insurance commissioner. We even had all of our insurance providers at the table to talk about how this could be possible, in order for kids to be able to access those services when they need it, without being fearful of when they go home and parents receiving something in the mail about the services that were provided. And so, I know that with this group, that was a key priority for us to support school-based wellness. But in addition to that, is really around, and this is just another strategy on how we sustain the efforts of school-based health centers across the state, especially now that we have a bill in place that allows for the starting up of school-based health centers at the elementary level. And that's going to continue on. So I just wanted to say thank you, as someone that has worked on this for at least the last 5 years, maybe, to really look at sustainability, because this really does impact, kids getting services, but it also helps providers as well continue to support what they're doing. So thank you.
Thanks. And Yvette, actually, this reminds me that with our new version of this bill, there will be some clarifications to hopefully make it more clear that we are trying to include the population for wellness centers. I know when we had initially looked at the bill, there was definitely confusion with the language. So we had worked on that to make it a little bit more clear.
So there's a question in the chat, Representative Griffith, basically what kind of pushback might be anticipated? And this was Ray's question.
So right now we're working on the pushback. We're trying to make sure that we address some of the stakeholders' concerns, mostly around the concerns that we've really been working on right now. Centers around some language changes. So we're really working and trying to hash some issues out. I think that the next couple of weeks will reveal to us a lot about how significant a pushback we have, or if we're going to get pretty much everyone to at least that I might anticipate to a neutral position rather than a position of opposition. I know that, and I can't remember which state it was, but I believe that Massachusetts, when first introduced, there was a lot of pushback. They put the brakes on for a second, worked out a lot of the issues, and then when their session gavelled back in, they were able to introduce another bill that was very similar to the first bill, and really was with welcome arms by all the stakeholders. So we'll see. I don't know if my colleagues in the other caucus how they might feel about it, but hopefully we'll get everybody on board.
Great.
Alexa, you want to add to the pushback anything?
I think lately it's just been, the pushback is really helping us get through some good questions that we have to answer about the actual implementation to make it as strong as possible. So if you agree with that. So.
Great. Thank you so much. Any other questions from work group members? Well, I can say,
question, Jeff, but I did just want to say that this really does support the state strategic plan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Yvette, this fits. This is a small. maybe it's seemingly like really small, like you're talking about EOB, the thing you get in the mail when you're done, like so small to a user, but like as someone who's watching this play out in school-based wellness, this has been, to Yvette's point, these are the things that really matter when you go to do statewide implementation of something of this magnitude. So this is that's why this work group brought that forward as a recommendation back when we started, and to hear that there's pieces of legislation and folks working out there to support that in every way possible is encouraging. So I was going to just say that same thing, Yvette.
Well, thank you. Thank you for those positive messages. And I know Yvette talking about the social determinants of health, I think that there's yet another bill that she could bring up that we are working very diligently on, that if you ever want to invite me back, I'm happy to come
I'm
talk
sure
about it.
Yvette will figure out a way to get herself invited back with something else and on the table. I can see her smiling now. She's thinking about now the email she's going to send to Ray and I as soon as this is over.
Well, I'll just let you know, it was filed. It's called House Bill 317. It provides medical insurance to children who are undocumented. So.
Oh, I saw that one I saw that one out there. That's, again, about access and opportunity for those who need it. So appreciate the work. Thank you for your time and be willing to come out and speak to this group. We appreciate it very much.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for all of your hard work. I know it's been a long road, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing your report and recommendations and being able to assist you in any way that I can in the General Assembly or elsewhere. So thank you very much. It was really my honor and Alexa's honor to join you today.
Thank you. All right. I got a message in the chat from Haley. We have a quorum. So before we do anything, you received an email from Haley just yesterday with the minutes for December and January. So can I get a motion to approve? I can do them both at one time, right, Haley? We can just do both. Or we have to do
I
one?
think so. I was thinking about that. I think it's okay.
All right.
Maybe
Can I
our
get a
legislator will disagree, but
I can get a motion to approve the December and January minutes for the social determinants work group.
So moved.
And can I get a
Second.
All right, and we'll go with the signify your approval by remaining silent, just because I know there's people driving. Oh, got an approved from Ray in the chat. Those opposed, please speak out or put something in the chat. Great. All right. Minutes approved. All right. So now we really want to move on to an extension of the conversation we were having with Adrian last month. Dr. Peoples, welcome back. And we're calling into the room also for this discussion, Katie Semmel, the Executive Director of the Data Service Center. This is an extension, or actually a revisit of what Adrian started last month, which was the brainstorming conversation around what should an equity data dashboard look like. And everything is on the table. As Adrian said, there's no wrong answer and there's nothing to hold back. And so what we did is we sent out 4 pre-slugged questions to all the work group members that we're teeing up what the questions we were going to talk about here. What we're going to do for this portion of the agenda, the conversations will be amongst the work group members. Any members of the public who are here, we will have plenty of time in the chat. If you have comments you want to publicly state, then that's a perfect time. Or if you throw it in the chat, a lot of times the chat's an easy way for those questions to get this folded into the discussion. Ray, did I miss anything about where we're headed with this discussion right now?
We just wanted to remind everyone that this equity dashboard creation is a recommendation that was approved through the Reading Consortium and resourced initially last year. And it is absolutely essential that as we continue to drive towards equity, that we get more clear about how we're measuring our progress.
Great.
How we're tracking and how we're measuring.
Great point, Ray. Yeah, this is not coming out of left field. Those of you, the work group members who are here know this was a staple of the conversation. But those who are maybe new to the audience, this is just so to refresh that. Thanks, Ray, to clarify. So the way I thought we would approach this is we have 4 questions. If maybe we allotted 10 minutes for each question, if we need that much, we don't. Some of these are questions that could go on for longer, and some of them might be done in less than 10. So we kind of like tried to balance it out. What I am going to do is I'm going to put Adrian and Katie a little bit on the spot. They're not going to have to facilitate breakout groups. They did make it real clear that that is not what they want to do, and so we're not going to do that. So you can rest easy, Adrian. But what we are going to ask is when each question comes up, if either one of you would just kind of pose the question and just give the work group a little bit of structure around what it's looking for and what it's talking about, kind of refresh a little bit of what you brought up last month, and then we'll have our conversation. Haley will kind of take notes. I'll keep track of time to keep us moving. We'll facilitate through the 4 questions, and then after that last one is done, Adrian, I'm going to tee it off to you for the homework question that we talked about. So you kind of lay the foundation for that, and then that's outside of the 40 minutes. So that's really the path that we're taking right now.
Sure.
So that said, Haley, let's see what our first question is. And this is pretty straightforward. I probably could tee this one up, Adrian, but I am going to allow you to do it.
Sure. So thank you very much. I see lots of smiling faces. We appreciate those. Hopefully those are not pictures that are just frozen in time. Those are actual faces. So that would be great. Also, I see faces of people that, of course, I interact with in my duties at DOE. You don't even think about asking me for something. If you've asked me for something via email, I will get to it as soon as possible. So no worries there. Okay, so for the members of the committee, this is an English exercise. Okay, this is not a math exercise. This is an English exercise. We're answering questions in as many words as you think are possible to get your point across. So don't feel that you need to be constrained in any way. Don't feel that you have to provide some kind of example in a screen share or any of that. We're just really trying to get what's in your brain out into the air and then onto some paper that I'm sure Haley is vigorously taking notes on as we speak. So the question is simple. Who's this dashboard for? Who is going to be logging in and coming to a website, because it's a public site? Who's going to be coming to this site? Who's it for? And I think it shouldn't be any simpler than that.
Any first takers?
Yeah, look, there's no one right answer here. There could be several answers to this question, but it's short. Who's it for?
I'll throw one in the mix, Adrian, to get the conversation. I was just going to say, community organizations working with the students in the city of Wilmington or families in the city of Wilmington. So community outreach advocates.
Okay, so I hear that, Jeff.
Yep.
I also see educators, parents, students, researchers, policymakers. And again, this is a pie in the sky answer, right? So there are no wrong answers here. And then I see also parents come to mind first. Okay, so I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Do we need to tease out the educators a little bit further, as Tamara pointed out, where it says it's administrators, teachers, or is educators? Is there a distinction between a teacher and an administrator?
But I think that's going to actually lead into your second question, which is what are they looking for? So if they were looking for the same thing, then they would be the same group. But educators, I see educators and administrators. So I'm going to do counting commas here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I see 7 audiences so far. Any other thoughts? I've got my eyes keened on the chat for those of you who have laryngitis and don't want to turn your mics on.
I can just.
Is there, I was gonna say, something tells me that there should be those in well, I don't know who they are, but people in the economic space, like business leaders, because like there's talking about economic development in business industry. I don't know what I would call that. Business leaders. I don't know if that's
Business
right.
leaders is good. I think business leaders is good. I see school board on here. Philanthropists as well. So philanthropists, business leaders. So now we're up to 8, 9, 10. Other government officials to tease out policymakers. So we've got 10, 11-ish.
Anyone say school board members?
School board members has been mentioned, yes. Legislators. Okay, some of these are synonyms. I
Right.
see policymakers and legislators. I think the same thing, but I think as we go through this, we're going to have to get our semantics right, and we're going to talk about that in several ways over the course of this meeting. But we want to, but yes, just spill them out. Katie, I don't see your face in my immediate window because we're sharing screen. I can only see about 4 or 5 of us, but if there's anything that you want to add to this, please let me know.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is this is a lot, and what would the priorities actually be?
Okay, so we are going to, I think, move into that at some point.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Soon.
This is a brain dump of everything possible right now without trying to
Prioritize anything.
Yes.
anything. We just want to collect all the pieces.
Yeah.
And then
So,
we'll start sorting them later.
Okay.
yeah, no guardrails.
Yep.
I agree with you, Katie. Eventually, we may have to. There are lots of terms for it: wet blankets, or guardrails, or dream smashers. Something about parades. There are things that we will have to be at some point, but that's not today. Today, it's all comers. All right, so I've got 11. The answer to the who has 11 members in it. Okay.
I think that we're,
Sure. Does educators include IHEs? So sometimes when we talk about
Okay.
educators, those people are
Okay.
thinking K to
That-
12.
Okay.
good point.
Good
Very
point.
good point.
Good point. So we've got researchers. Now, researchers are definitely IHEs.
Right. Right.
So they're on the list. Are you thinking anybody in the IHE space that's not a researcher?
I mean, faculty members who teach, future teachers, for example, are not necessarily researchers,
Sure.
but they definitely would be interested in that information.
Okay. All right. I know Haley is burning up her ink over there. We are getting this both verbally and recording and in the chat box. So this is good. So I've got 12-ish.
Yep.
12-ish unique audience members so far. Yes, members of the public, if you've got an idea of an audience member that hasn't been mentioned, please add that to the chat. The chat is being recorded, so we will capture those ideas as well.
So Adrian, we're proud. We're in time-wise, we're in a good spot to move on to the next question. So whenever you're feeling like we've got enough to move to number 2, I think one last call for everybody to put in the chat or chime in, maybe their last thoughts on this one.
Yep, I will do my standard thing that I do on these virtual calls. I'll make a last call, going once, going twice, third and final time. Okay, so we can move on to the question number 2 now. All right, so we've talked about the who. Now the question is the what. Now we're going to need some time for this. We're probably going to run out of time for this. So Haley and Jeff, make sure that you keep a close eye on the 10-minute window.
I started my watch for this one, just to be clear, because I knew this one.
Don't start until after I get my spiel out so they can get their 10 minutes.
All right, I'll let you get your spiel out. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is, you're going to have to mentally picture this now, right? What are these who? Now that we know the who, researchers and educators and parents and so on, now that we know the who, what are these audience members looking at? What do they see? One, when they come to the site. And two, what information can they get when they come to the site? Now those questions are connected. They're both what questions, okay? What will they see and what can they get?
Great.
Okay, and now, Jeff, you can start the clock.
I guess, thank you, Adrian. All right, just making sure I don't want to mess it up.
Yes.
All right, so we can do it the same way. Just if you want to speak up and chime in or throw it in the chat, and we can just continue to populate the discussion that way.
And this is an English exercise. We're going to take some of these words and things that you say, and Katie and I will help craft. We'll guardrail it. We'll help make some sense out of it. All you have to do now is just speak whatever comes to you when you think of it. Okay, here we go. Read data in graphs, tables, etc. Okay, graphs, data, etc. Data. Okay, so we're going to get some data. All right. What kind of data? And don't say equity data. What kind of data?
Academic achievement data.
Okay, academic achievement data, graduation rates. Okay.
Children participating in services starting at birth.
Participating in services. Okay, what kind of services?
WIC, TANF, SNAP, home visiting, ECAP, Reading Preschool.
Okay, so I hear education data and I hear non-education data. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, all right.
They just added discipline.
I see discipline, attendance rates. I see a lot of things skewing towards education, which is great. Okay, Tamara or Tamara?
No, you had it right. It's Tamara.
There it is. All right. I know sisters, one Tamara and one Tamara. They're born 2 years apart. I question their parents every time I see them. Okay. College readiness. What do you mean by college readiness data?
Yeah, just typically looking at a combination of either graduation rates, proficiency rates with reading and mathematics skills, all of those metrics that determine if a child is supposedly college ready. Okay. Okay. All right. Now, what you're hearing me do here, and I've got input data. Okay, I'm coming back to this. What you're hearing me do, and Katie is giving me tacit approval to do this, is to ask just a few guiding questions so that we can kind of tease out a little bit of what we're doing here, right? Just think of we're just kind of trying to loosen the strands so that we can see them individually. Demographics on students in AP and honors classes. So demographics, okay. Demographics, race is a demographic, Tamara, you can shake, yes. Gender, okay. Say race and gender, I'll put that in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, I think,
what about special population status?
I was going to say special education, possibly EL status.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Now it's coming. ELs, English learners is another one. Okay, I'm coming back to input data. Delane Johnson, can you talk to me a little bit about what input data means?
I guess I was thinking of this in terms of, oftentimes we talk about performance and outcome data, but what about the input data that in terms of what are students receiving? Teacher backgrounds, teacher credentials.
Okay, here we go.
Access to different types or levels of courses, honors courses or AP courses. So I know that's all very broad, but if we're talking about opportunity gaps, the opportunity gaps are in the input, not in the performance or the outcome.
I'm glad this is being recorded because there's a lot of powerful things you're saying here that are going to be that may get lost. I'm sure Haley's already switched pens at least once. I see zip codes, I see race, I see special education eligibility. I see school climate index, which is different than discipline. Home visits, Head Start. I see income. Retention. Jeff, talk to me about retention. What do you mean by retention?
How many times they were retained and at what grade level?
Okay, so retention from a grade repeater standpoint, not retention from a staffing standpoint.
That's correct. Retention
Okay.
from a grade repeater standpoint, and income from, there's the low income and non-low income metric that's out there for in education.
Okay, okay.
And using
All right.
whatever, I can only speak to when I'm speaking to that, I'm speaking about whatever determines that I see when I go on to the state website. I'm not trying to classify what I mean by low income.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Understand.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
What about transientness of families?
Would that be like something like residency changes?
Yes.
A number of residency changes?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, that'd be,
All right.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
What about choice? Anything about choice?
Good. Okay. So Katie, I can two things. One, Jeff, I realize right now that I am facilitating. Okay. This is exactly what's happening right now as I'm facilitating. I just want you to know for the record that I know that's happening. Number two.
But it's not a breakout group.
That is true.
You said no breakout groups. Just to be real clear, Ray, you were there. He said, I am not going to facilitate a breakout group.
That is a true statement. Okay. Number two, Katie, I cannot see your right hand, but I assume that you, like me, are not writing any of this down, right? So at some point in time.
I'm not writing it, but I am typing it.
Okay. All right. Well, both my hands are up in the air. We're going to have to, there's a lot of things coming in here.
Look, Haley's got an A team and a B team on here. She's working, recording. There's another person on here gathering up nuggets. You're going to have plenty of the information. So you just keep on going.
Okay.
Keep on going.
What's my time check, Jeff? What's my time check?
I was just looking at it. I think we are at 6:40. We have about we're coming up on 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. So what I'm seeing is a lot of things, policies on students in certain demographic groups, languages spoken, where students live. So heat maps of some type by geography and zip code, out of school wraparound services, we could flesh out. And so on. So education data, non-education data from an equity standpoint in this dashboard. I'm going to let some other notes come by here, and the notion being, as you mentally close your eyes and you look at this site, you are seeing what your users are going to be able to get access to. Now, we're not talking about how they'll get it, how they'll see it. Those things come in the design phase, and we're a little early for that. Right now, we just want to know what they want to see. Disproportionality data. Okay, disproportionality is a pretty meaty word. I know what it means. We will make sure that we flesh that out specifically. Developmental screening participation. Dawn, I think that's a health piece of information from a health perspective. Is that right?
It could be either, because we are with HB 202, we're looking at developmental screening in all licensed childcare centers, and OCCL is at DOE. Mm-hmm. So we're also doing that through the school district. So that would be education, but then there's also developmental screening that's done with the pediatrician. So it could be done by the healthcare provider, or it could be done in the childcare, or it could be done by the local public school in conjunction with the local public school.
Okay.
So it's both.
Okay. All right. We're getting all of that down. I'm glad you elaborated on that. One thing I do see here from Kelly, hi Kelly, is county comparisons. So not only do you want to see a piece of information in and of itself, you want to see a piece of information compared across geography. And I'm going to be generic here. So that could be county. but that could be something smaller than county, depending upon what it is that we're looking at. Also, I've had conversations about this equity dashboard, and we think in a very small geographic region, all within one county. So when Kelly says county comparison, she's thinking about this equity dashboard at a statewide level at a minimum, right? So that's so I'm just kind of teasing some of this out as I read this. And Katie is telling me whether or not, non-verbally, she's communicating whether or not I'm actually getting this right. Jeff, what are we talking about?
I was going to say, I don't know, somehow school feeder data, like where the students go to school, right? Like what's their feeder pattern? It plays back a little bit to the choice question.
Yep. Okay. All right.
We're at 10 minutes. So
okay. So I'm gonna
pause
there. Is there any other comments in this question going once?
Sure. Just 2 comments.
Yes.
And I wonder if heat maps for all of, like, is it possible to have a mechanism to do a heat map in any of these areas? Because I think that could be pretty valuable. And then the second thing I wanted to say is that some of the Newcastle County districts that work with the Data Service Center and Katie have had for years a social index that was never fleshed out and populated. And I wonder if this might be an opportunity to think about what would make up the social index that could be, in my mind, offset or correlated with the academic index. So it can't be the same, not necessarily the same configuration in each, but to help us predict, the success characteristics, or what would be the portrait of a graduate,
or at least bring someone to attention to someone if there's things that are triggering things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right, Terry.
And I see some additional things that have been added to the chat. So that's good. I'm glad we got that on the record, Terry. Truancy data I see. Okay, so I'm going to let you keep typing, but we're going to shift focus from question 2 to question 3 after I do my all call. Going once, going twice, third and final time. Okay, sold. Okay, now question number 3 becomes a little bit more complicated. It is also a what question, but it is more data focused. Okay, the notion of a metric, right, is something that we can measure, right? But above and beyond that, it is something that has a benchmark associated with it, right? A level below which or above which we can make some type of judgment or spur into action. And when most people think judgment, they think negative. I'm not being negative here. What I'm saying is that there is a benchmark of away from which we can determine how we can compare groups based upon their position relative to a benchmark. Okay, those are the types of things that we consider when we consider metrics. For those people in the business world, they may think of key performance indicators or KPIs, for example, things that are measured that have a benchmark, and we know how well or not well we're doing based upon our relative distance from the benchmark. Okay, so this is going to take a little bit more guidance from myself and Kelly's part, Katie's part, I think, although Kelly has some experience with that, as well as other researchers on the call.
So, Adrian, before you move on, I'm going to put in the chat just a statement that says we're starting question number 3.
Yes.
So when they go back to the printout of this, they see it. So at this point in time, if you have thoughts on 3, please hold them to public comment, or make sure you clarify, or question 2 or 1, make sure you clarify if it's not going to be a question 3 response in the chat. I'm just putting that out there now.
Okay, so I think another way to ask this question that may get better more targeted responses is, what are you measuring?
So Adrian, I'll throw one out there. How about absences?
Okay.
Is that something you measure?
So what about absences are we measuring? Are we measuring absence rates? Are we measuring just the number of absences for a student? What are we measuring?
I think rates and numbers, because there's a certain number that is, if you hit a certain number in a certain grade or in a certain band, you put yourself at risk. But then rates collectively, when you're looking at maybe populations collect together. So I would say an absence number of individual absences,
which is a frequency. So absence frequency.
And then the rate of a collective of the targeted audience or the audience at either a feeder school or something like that, or in a community, in a neighborhood. What's the attendance rate of X neighborhood students who attend school? So I would say somehow rates has to be in there.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit more context here. Yep. As we take the notes from this meeting and we list all the things that this audience says they want to see in the dashboard, eventually we're going to have to come to a column right to the next to it and say, okay, what about this are we measuring?
Yep.
Right. So I see discipline. Are we measuring out of school suspension rates? Are we measuring in school suspension rates? Right. So what are we measuring when it comes to discipline? Right.
So referrals.
Right.
Because you get a referral that doesn't assume anything other than it's a referral. It's generic.
Right.
So the reaction, the consequence would be would that be another metric? Because a consequence can be broadly termed as a suspension, detention, in school, reprimand, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Right. So those are the types of things. So as we list all of the things in the what column, right in the next column, we're going to say, all right, what about this particular item are we trying to measure? And again, we are not trying to get everything in this call. We can't do it in 10 minutes, right? It would take us a few days to get it all, but just kind of getting your thoughts around what it is that you want to measure.
Right. I'm going to start the clock now, Adrian. I think you speed it up.
Please do. Thank you.
All right.
So I see first off from Cora is out of school suspensions, in school suspensions. Cora, are you thinking frequencies only, or are you thinking rates, or are you thinking both?
I was thinking frequency more so, but I guess you could do rates. I was thinking.
Okay. There are, and the researchers on the call can talk to us about what rates do versus what frequencies do as it relates to looking at them and comparing them, but we can actually talk through that. Again, there's no wrong answer here. Let's just kind of get it all down. But yes, frequencies I'm hearing. From a suspension example, we should track how many days a student is out of school by offense and compare to other students for a similar offense. Okay, all right, that's a good one. Dropout, graduation and dropout rates, yes. GPAs, okay, GPAs this is one of those things where everybody does GPAs in a slightly different way, right? And so for that piece of measurement, if you want to be able to compare and do apples to apples, there may be some additional work in order to be able to determine what a GPA is.
But so an unweighted straight up A, B, C, D, like you strip all the weighting away from all the different scales and all. You would have to account for the different ranges that people use for A's and B's. So that is, but GPA
either that or the equity dashboard would have to define its own range.
Yes.
And put everybody's raw grade in it.
Right.
And for this purpose, for the purposes of this comparison, we consider this grade range to be an A, this to be a B, and so on. Just so that
maybe grades is a better use of term then, and then define, like, because GPA does vary. Maybe a better use of term is just course grades. I put also end of year grade because middle school and elementary schools looks different. Yeah. Whatever that looks like.
Number of years in education, teachers and administrators. Okay, that's a frequency count. From an equity perspective, we will always ask, and again, we don't have to do this on this call, we'll run out of time, but whether or not you're looking at this by demographic, so by grade, by race, by special population, by geography. So you start throwing by phrases in what you're measuring, you get a more complicated piece of data. Level of classes being taken by student, college prep, honors, IB. Okay, so that's a high school measure. Educator turnover and retention rate. So here's the second definition of retention that's come up, and we'll keep track of that. Number of years teachers are in a given school. Number of years administrators are in a given school. Okay, all right. So now the numbers, what we're measuring is getting a little bit more specific, which is perfect. Okay, so not only are we talking about discipline in general, we're talking about the number of occurrences, incidents, the number of actions, suspensions, expulsions, referrals, timeouts, sent to the principal's offices and so on. And teacher retention being the number of years a teacher are in a school, the number of administrators are in a school. You can get sophisticated and say the number of years, the average number of years teachers and administrators are in the school as a whole. What's the average years of experience within a school of the staff, which is a measure of how cohesive or how long a staff is together as a whole. So those are some kinds of things you can do. Number of substitutes in school daily or monthly, average of long-term substitution. Okay, all right. So these we are definitely getting down into specifics, which is fantastic. Dr. Menzer, can I get a time check?
6.5 minutes.
Okay, good. All right. So
Give you a little bit more.
I'm seeing a lot of education measures, which is good. I've only been on this call since 5 p.m., but shouldn't data collection be driven by your research questions? Dr. Davis, no. The answer to that question is no. I think the purpose of this dashboard is to provide lots of data to support research. And so there will be questions that you haven't thought of yet that coming to the dashboard and seeing the rich data that's available will give you the opportunity to go in research directions that you choose. If we only make this dashboard about the research questions, of course, once the research questions are done, then the dashboard in essence is limited or in some type of channel. And I don't think that's the purpose based upon the answers to the question, to the first question and the second question. I think you will be limited, but you should be able to answer some very good, rich, detailed research questions based upon the data that's available here.
So Adrian, a question for you. In terms of like, if I'm thinking about enrollment history, like where the child has gone to school, is there, what is the metric in there? Just their enrollment? Is it their enrollment school? Is that, it's not, we're not, yeah.
So trying to get something about an individual student will be near impossible in this equity dashboard, right? So when you think of enrollment history, if you're not thinking about it at an individual student level, you must be thinking about it in some other way.
Right.
So this, to me, that leans towards choice.
It goes back to the transiency question, I think, like it kind of relates to that, like the mobility question. So I was wondering if there's a way that your school of record is something that gets pulled collectively, like,
sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know if that's.
We would know, the Department of Education would know a student's feeder pattern, school. Right. They would also know, with the help of DSC, whether they choiced out of that school. And so there is something that could be developed around that to kind of talk through it. Now, the percentage of students who choice as a percentage, the number of students who choice as a percentage of the population is small, relatively small. Everything is relative. So the notion that you're going to then tease out a subpopulation of that could be that it's even smaller. So that they're, but it's something worth attempting to flesh out. School of record by geographic area.
I just threw that in there as a maybe pin that for that one.
Number of schools attended in the grade clusters. Number of schools attended
There you go.
in the grade clusters. K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. Okay. Cora, my only thought about that is that K5, 6, 8, 9, 12 is a very, not every, we have a lot of different grade configurations supported in Delaware. So it would be hard to fit some of the schools in these clusters. But, you know, that's, again, there's no restriction here, just a thought around that one. Okay, let me see if I've missed any questions.
Coming up on about another minute and a half, Adrian, on
Right.
this one.
So the conductive component, any data collection. Very interesting. All right. Okay. Yep. I see that. We've got that comment, Dr. Davis, and I think that your points are valid. And I think this dashboard, when it's constructed, I believe will get at that in some way. I don't think it'll hit the bullseye though. Proficiency across different subgroups, yes. More than one school in a grade configuration, yes. Okay, I see lots of education metrics. I don't see many non-education metrics. So Haley, I think we're going to have to write down a question. Where do we get the non-education metrics from? Who do we need to engage with to help us flesh some of these things out? So I'm just offering that into the ether as I look at the types of questions that we're getting from a metrics standpoint. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're definitely at 10. So if you want to,
I do want to transition. Are there any other comments for the microphone? Are there any other comments around this question going once, going twice, third and final time? Okay, sold. All right. So before you transition to the next slide, I'll let Dr. Menzer type in question number 4 in the chat box so that we know. There we go. All right, now let's transition. Okay, so the last of the 4-pack of questions that we want to entertain here in this forum is, what's the lowest level of data we want or need? Okay, but again, there's no right or wrong answer here. I think this question is self-explanatory. So I'm going to start letting some answers come in, and then if we go too far left or right of field, I will provide more guidance. But think of all the things that you want to measure, down to what level do you want to measure them? Okay, of the things you talked about, down to what level do you want to measure them? You can start the clock, Dr. Menzer. You can start it.
I was just waiting for my cue from you, Dr. Peoples. Just wanted to make sure I was following.
You can start the clock. Okay, I'm just letting this sit for a second.
I might need to. You might need to like.
So let me show you.
Me like what does that look like? Because like student attendance.
If I'm thinking about, so one thing you want to do is you want to do it by county, because Kelly says she want to do comparisons by county.
Okay.
So,
all right. There you go. All
so
right.
So we want to do a county. Here we go. Here's one. I want to compare by zip code.
Okay.
Right? This is about getting down to the level of people you want to serve.
Go. Okay, got it.
Getting down to the level of people you want to serve. So zip code census tract, I see school and grade level. Okay, I see that.
Yep.
Okay. So we are thinking that gets us down to gender, race, low income. All right, so if you want to measure down by demographic. Okay. And I'm assuming that you want to do any combination of these. Okay. And I think that's probably a safe assumption. So I want to do by school and by grade and by gender, by school and by grade and by gender and by race, right? There is going to be, I don't think you can get to the individual level without human resource issues. Absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. Depending upon how low you try to go, you could potentially run into privacy issues.
Yeah.
So that is definitely a problem, a potential hazard for this data, right? However, if I looked at it by race, by grade, by gender, but I only looked at it at the state level, you might not run into privacy issues. So there's an element of geography associated with this question, in addition to the human element, right? Human element being by grade, by race, things that are attributed to the student versus geography, right? Mm-hmm. And so that combination is good. Okay. Thanks, Yvette. Based on geographic assignments, residence by school, by gender, by race, and other variables. Okay. All right. Katie, is there anything you want to add here to help guide the conversation?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So Adrian, you said something, and I don't know if we caught it in the chat or if Haley caught it, but you said like county is an example, like by county, correct?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think that was, I didn't see it go into the chat. I wanted to
yes. Yes. So we are measuring what by what? Right. Discipline suspension rates by race. Pre-screening data by gender, by grade. Right. And so those are the types of things that we're trying to look at. Okay, so as you kind of think more on this question, and Jeff, I don't think we're going to need as much time for this one.
Yeah.
But as you think about this, we have to define who our audience is. We have to define what it is we want to show them. We have to define at what level we want to show it to them. Okay. Once we get those three things answered with certainty, then from a dream standpoint, then we have to place our dream up against the realities of the world that we're living in right now. And aspects of that reality would include how much data availability do we have? Are there any privacy issues that are so even if we have the data available, are there any privacy issues that we need to be aware of that will limit us?
So Adrian, this is where we're fortunate that it's you and Katie in the room, right? Because we know your backgrounds and your access to much of or knowledge of the data where this stuff sits. When you take this back and your willingness to kind of grapple with this for us from this brainstorming session is that is exactly what we're looking to see, if I'm not mistaken, come out of this. Like what's doable, what's maybe already out there that we don't know about that can fit and support this. And what, does that, what do we need to build off of for that? So I think that's, you're going in the direction of like, this brainstorming session literally is a brainstorming session. It's just all the things that we think, and then, we will eagerly await some feedback from you and Katie in terms of like not the reality, but like where it can live and how long it would take to get to where it could live, and what does it need? What do we need to do to get it to that space? Because that's where, back to Ray's point before we even started this, this work was recommended. There's funding allocated for it. What do we need to do to get from this to, what's that, the dashboard itself. So I think your facilitation of this has been very, very helpful, and I'm appreciative of the fact that both you and Katie are in the room for it. And so I'll let you tie up this lowest level data one, because to your point, it's, this makes you think a little bit.
Yeah, look, this is a big ball of yarn, right? And we
Yeah.
started a month ago intentionally not putting any shackles on your thoughts and dreams, right? Because we want to know from an equities dashboard standpoint, how big of a ball of yarn can you actually put together? How big of one can you roll out into the kitchen floor for your cat to play with?
Well, we do have one other. You're going to roll out another big ball in a second here.
I am.
As we tee up so we'll hold on to that analogy. That's a good analogy there.
I am, right?
Yeah.
At some point in time, Katie and I, and I think at least a half a bottle of Advil are going to begin to pull on those strands of yarn, right? To kind of see what's possible. Katie, can we talk through a little bit about what our thoughts around that would potentially look like?
In terms right now, or just, I mean, you and I need to touch base, probably, talk about the data, like all the things for the most part, a large majority of this data exists today. It's just a matter of, figuring out how to pull it out of the systems in the way that it can be reported, create some reports on. So.
Yep. And we'll look to be visual, right? This audience member, some of the members of your audience are researchers and like things in rows and columns, because then they're going to take them and analyze them. Others are parents or visual learners. And they're going to want something that's not in a row or a column, but in something that is a little bit more graphic in nature. So we have to be prepared for that. But yes, we will. Haley, what I will ask is that what we're going to want is a spreadsheet, right? And maybe it's reading through notes here as well as the recorded part, but a spreadsheet. The first column is, what am I looking for? And each individual idea gets its own row. The second column is, what am I trying to measure? The third column is, who is this for? Right, so your audience. And then from there, Katie and I will be able to do some work. Now, I don't expect, Haley, for you to generate that spreadsheet, right? What I do expect, though, is we'll kind of work through how to get there, but that's where we need to get to. We need to be able to get to a spreadsheet that has all of the world of Equity Dashboard listed on it. We need to be able to sort it. So I can say, look, of the things that we want, only three of them are for this particular audience that we said we cared about. Right? So if of all the things that we want, only three of them are tailored for a specific audience, then how important is that audience? We're going to be able to start to ask some questions.
Great.
Again, to try to narrow some of this stuff down. There are going to be some additional columns Katie and I are going to put to the right, meaning, well, how available is this data? Right? Is this data available or not available?
Yeah.
Are there any privacy concerns around this data? Yes or no? Like all of those types of things, so that we can be like, all right, of the things that we want, 96% of them have privacy issues associated with them. That just means that there's something that we're going to have to pay attention to, for example. Oh, of all the things that we want, 60% of them are health related. And do we have any contacts in that world that can help us understand whether or not we have access to that data, right? So we just need to kind of get it all down on a spreadsheet so that we can sort it, look at it, color code it, and be like, all right, this is the universe as it stands today of the equity dashboard and the data that we want to get out of it.
Again, I'll say from my standpoint, and I know Ray feels the same way, we appreciate your willingness to engage in this work with us in the work group, without a doubt. So what I really would, you rolled out this is a big ball yarn, and you got another ball you want to roll out here in a second. It's not a question we're going to grapple with today. It's going to be similar to like you did last month, where you floated some thoughts, and then we needed to revisit it. And now we have a thread where these 4 questions will be a thread that we hear about. This next question, this homework question, is the one that I think is important, and it almost seems obvious, but really isn't. So I'll tee it up to you.
Sure.
And then we got to leave 10 minutes for public comment. So by 5:50, I want to make sure that we're able to stop officially for public comment. So I'll just give you that heads up.
Okay, good. All right. So this is a question that you should not, unless you are a member of the public. As a committee member, I want you to take this question away with you and think on it, right? I guarantee you the answer that you type tonight may not be the same as you would think of 2 days, 3 days, 4 days from now. Okay, Dr. Minzer, is that fair?
I've already changed mine from the last time we talked.
Okay, all right. So I think that's fair. Okay, so this question is around semantics. Okay, this is a semantics question. All right. Here is the question, and then I'm going to give you a little detail. When you personally think of the city of Wilmington, what do you think of? Okay, I'll repeat the question. When you personally think of the city of Wilmington, what do you think of? Okay, this dashboard is designed to help communities. Okay, right? Those communities have people, those communities also have boundaries. And when we think of the city of Wilmington historically, the answer to what constitutes the city of Wilmington has several answers. Okay? To effectively organize and implement your dashboard, you're going to have to be clear about your communities. Okay? Otherwise, you could get people using your dashboard and answering questions with the wrong data. Okay? So most of us on the call have some experience in Delaware education, have some experience in Delaware politics, have some experience in Delaware life. Okay? I didn't come to Delaware until 1989. I didn't start working for the Department of Education until 2002. So my education experience in Delaware is only higher education. It's not K-12. There are some people on this call who have graduated from a high school in the K-12 system here in Delaware, right? So when we think of the city of Wilmington, or more broadly, when we think of the communities we're trying to serve, we need to be very clear and on the same page as it relates to the dashboard, what we mean. Okay, so I want you to think on that. I want you to write it down. I want you to hold it up in the air. I want you to look at it. I want you to say it out loud. And then Dr. Minzer would like you to be prepared to come back and discuss it.
That's correct. Yeah, that's your homework. We're a work group that gives homework, Adrian.
Yes. Yes. Right. So how do we define the city of Wilmington? That's your homework. And that it is 5:44. And I will turn the mic over back to Jeff. Katie, I want you to know that the next time we do this, I am going to eat a throat lozenge and I'm going to let you drive this bus.
Okay.
Thank you, Adrian and Katie, for being here for this, and Adrian for facilitating. So, using your knowledge of this process to help guide us. So we do appreciate it. And you pointed out very clearly, we are going to have a series of meetings moving forward. I don't believe we have them officially on the schedule. The goal is to keep them probably the same day of the week, the Monday, 4:30 to 6 from now until June. We'll populate that out, and this will be the conversation we need to get closer to resolution as we get closer to April and May. And so we'll get those dates out to the work group here officially on the calendar in short order. Ray, did you want to have any concluding thoughts as we approach into public comment and open up the floor for folks to give, if they feel they would like to speak, if they have anything to add?
My concluding thoughts are you all are great. Your ideas were really flowing. Let's keep it going. Do your homework, please. And thank you so much, Katie and Adrian for joining us. I'm excited about where we're headed.
You're absolutely welcome. Look, it's been a pleasure. I am passionate about the work that you're about to undertake. So we want to help you as much as we can. And Katie's going to do all the heavy lifting, and I'm going to stand out front and say what a wonderful job she did when it's over.
All right, well, we're writing that down. It's recorded, Adrian. You can't go back on that. Can't go back on that. Okay, that said, is there any last minute comments from a work group members? I see a lot of nice things in the chat. Before we jump in to open up the floor to public comment. I appreciate everybody being here tonight. This was our fullest member meeting in a while since the our first meeting in the fall. So I think that it's exciting to get everyone back in the room and start talking about what we were charged with originally 2 summers ago. So great conversations this evening. Thanks, Haley, for keeping us in line and doing all the heavy lift. And you're going to do more lifting as you get Adrian the spreadsheet that he asked for. I know he said you're not going to do that, but yeah, you are. We know you are. All right, that said, do we have any members of the public wishing to make comment? We ask that if you do, you limit it to 3 minutes per comment. Just show a hand or put a hand up in the chat and we'll call on you.
I'm not seeing any.
Oh, somebody here with a mask. I'm not sure who that is. You have a comment? Please identify yourself.
Sorry.
That's
And I don't want to pull down my mask because I am in the office right now.
You're fine. Go right ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I am a representative from Kingswood Community Center. And we were very, very fortunate to receive funding that came out of the consortium's recommendations for early childhood programming. So I just wanted to say that we really, really appreciate that funding. It has allowed us to do a lot with professional development, to pay our teachers a higher wage, exactly the goals of it. I do just want to say that one of our concerns is just the sustainability of that funding, specifically when it comes to equity. So we know that it's important to pay our teachers a living wage. It's important for our kids to have these services, and we just want to make sure that it's sustainable. We would hate to raise salaries only to have to cut them in the future. That's not the goal at all. So we would love to be part of the ECAP program or part of a permanent budget line or something so that this program is not a one and done and it's more sustainable for our kids that have so benefited from it.
Thank you, Julie, for your comments. Appreciate it. And sustainability is definitely front and center on just about everybody's mind on this work group as well. So thank you very much. Anyone else public comment? I'm going to pull an Adrian in a second. Going once, going twice, 3 times. That said, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, get a second? Second, and that means we are all in favor, can say aye and check out. So we'll get that information to you about the next set of meetings. Haley will get it out to you soon, and we'll be on the lookout for the homework question in our next step. So thank you very much, everybody, this evening. Great conversations.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.